Hi, this is Christine with Stampin' Up, and today I want to show you a really cool technique with the Oh So Ombre paper. I call it a sunburst because it kind of looks like a sunburst here. So we're going to make a variation of this card. So to start, you need a rectangle. This is just regular white at 5 by 3. And then this is our matte layer. I'm using Daffodil Delight for this one. Then we've got our card base, which is 8.5 by 5.5, and I have scored it at 4 1/4. And then I'm using the Oh So Ombre. I'm using the Granny Apple Green. There's this really cool pattern sheet as well as the just ombre. So we're going to start with this one. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is cut this paper. So I need it to be 4.5 by 6. So I'm cutting off the dark green part because I really want to focus on this really pretty ombre to make the pattern. So I'm just putting that in at 4.5. And I am going to use this other piece as well, but not right away. So next we're going to cut this at 1.5 times 4. If you don't have the Oh So Ombre paper, you could also kind of replicate this by using 2 shades that are close, like Daffodil Delight and So Saffron would look great, being 2 shades of yellow that are just a little bit off from each other. The idea is to have a light and a dark. So next we're going to take these rectangles and we're going to cut them diagonally, so from corner to corner. The tip to this is that try to align them that we're cutting in the same way each time. The first card I made with this, I did not do that consistently, and it was a little more challenging to get the effect. And one more. So now we've got 8 triangles. I am done with my cutting board for now, so I'll just put that out of the way. And I'm just going to pull in that little sheet of Whisper White. So the other thing we're going to do, and I probably should have done this sooner, is at the 2.5 mark, we want to just put a light pencil mark on that. I'm using grid paper, so I've got my lines here to work with. If you don't have grid paper, you can just measure it out with a ruler. Make at the top and the bottom, mark out 2.5, and just with your pencil bring those lines together. And so we're not going to see this line, it's just to help us position the paper. So now what we're going to do is put the paper, glue the paper down, and we're going to alternate between the light and the dark. So I'm putting glue directly on the paper, not on the designer series paper, but on the paper. You don't need a lot, just enough that it's going to be stuck on. So I'm putting the point at the bottom, trying to line up with that pencil mark, and that is our starting position. So you've got some hanging off here, don't worry about that. We'll take care of it after. So try not to put too much glue as well, because you don't want it poking through. So that looks like the same shade. There we go. So again, just alternating light and dark. And what I like with the liquid glue to do this is that it allows you to just move that so you don't have gaps, and you can really get the paper touching. I don't know what's going on with my glue. All right. So now we're going light, and you can kind of see the pattern starting to emerge already. Such a cool effect. And I've got some other ones that I've made as well that I'll show you after. Because once I started, I couldn't stop. So the Oh So Ombre paper is one of the Sale-a-bration papers. So it's only available until the end of February. So for every $60 that you spend, you get to choose a free item, and this paper is one of those items. So I do have a triangle here. I'm not going to worry about it right now. We're going to do the other half, and we'll come back to that. So I'm just, that's the same, so we're going to go dark. And then we'll go light. So I don't know, it makes a really cool kind of perspective, play on perspective, I suppose. And then we're going dark. What's pretty cool with this too is, I mean, once you've got your background done, you could use any stamp set to finish this off, or punch. It's just a really cool kind of background technique. All right, so now we've got a pretty fan. So to turn this into a background, we're going to flip it over and we're going to cut all these pieces. So I'm just going to use my snips. I'm just following the white line to do this. So I'm on a mission to use my paper because I am a bit of a paper hoarder. So I am sharing quite a few videos this week on ways to use your paper, because it's too pretty not to share. As much as it's hard to cut it, it's too pretty not to share. So that is my goal. All right, so that's that. So to finish off these white spaces, we are going to use kind of the largest of your cut pieces. Should do it. So this dark will line up nicely. And on this one, we've got a light piece, so that's perfect. So again, I'm putting the glue on my white piece and not the paper, because I don't want the designer series paper, which I'm going to be cutting. I don't want that to be full of glue. So this way I'm just putting glue where I need it, because we are going to be cutting the excess again. And it doesn't matter if you've got a little gap at the bottom. You may see that I have a small gap over here. That's going to be covered up, so not a concern. I've got an even bigger one here, but again, not a big deal because that's going to be covered up. So, where did I put my snips? I put them away. Why would I do such a thing? All right. All right, so that is our background piece. Isn't that pretty? I'm going to keep those handy. So we don't need these other small pieces. So I'm going to get rid of those. Now we're going to get into our matte layer. So I'm using Daffodil Delight because it's just, look at how happy that is. I mean, it's just so bright. So for this one, that's what I'm doing. I'm going to use my rectangle stamp punch, and I'm punching right out of this background. And the reason I'm doing this is I want to use that piece, but also this is going to be covered up by our mat, so it really does, or by our background, so it really doesn't matter that there's a hole in it. Nobody needs to know. So it's a nice way to economize a little bit on paper use. So I'm just going to stick those two together. One of the reasons I chose the Daffodil Delight, aside from the fact that it's just so gosh darn happy, is, my goodness, I'm just going to get my glue to the bottom here. So Granny Apple Green and Daffodil Delight are in the same color collection. They're both brights. So if you choose colors when you're planning your craft in the same color collection, you'll see that they complement each other quite nicely. So that's the method to the madness here. And I've got a little too much glue on this, so I hope it doesn't go too wonky. So I like to use liquid glue when I'm putting layers together, just again so that I have a little bit of wiggle room to line things up before it sets. And that is good. Got a little too much glue in that spot, but all right, so now we've got quite a gap to fill here. So that's where I'm going to pull in this darker piece of Granny Apple Green. And I'm going to cut it at 3/4. And the beauty of this is that's exactly 1.5. So by cutting it at 3/4, I've actually got 2 pieces at 3/4. And that allows me to fix things if I need to. All right. So that should line up beautifully at the bottom. And hopefully it's not too long. If it is, I'll just trim it a bit. That works. So I'm just going to glue that down again with the liquid glue. So now we just got more of a finished design. Now again, I said I wanted to cover this up, so we're going to pull in some ribbon. I'm actually just getting a piece of scrap paper here to do this on because it is a messy process. So I've got Old Olive here, which does complement this card quite nicely. However, it's a little more muted than I'd like. So I'm going to pull in my Stampin' Blends alcohol markers. First I will cut off how much I need, then I will color. So I just need enough to wrap around the card on one side. So that's that. And I'm going to use the light Granny Apple Green Stampin' Blend just to kind of brighten this color a bit. I've talked about before how you can color our white ribbons to whatever color you like by using your Stampin' Blends. And this is something I saw another demonstrator do that kind of blew me away, really, is that you can use existing colored ribbon and just kind of play with the shade of it by using your Stampin' Blends as well. So that's kind of a cool trick that I wanted to share with you. So because these are alcohol markers, this will dry like super fast, which is awesome because that means we can just keep going with our project. So I am going to use 2 glue dots to stick this to my project. And this is still a tiny bit wet. I'll hold on that. Let's make the rest of our card. So I am using the Butterfly Gala Punch, which is one of my favorites, or Butterfly Punch. So I want these to show up on my yellow. So I'm going to, I want to use the kind of shading, but not too dark and not too light. So kind of midpoint. And I'm just punching that through. So now we've got two pretty butterflies. I may not use both on this one, I haven't decided yet. And before I move on to the butterflies, we are going to put our sentiment down. So I'm going to use the Butterfly Gala stamp set, which goes with the punch. It's not sold as a bundle anymore. They are separate, stamp set and punch, but they were created together. So I'm just going to put a little note. It's going to be my sentiment. And I'm going to stamp that in Memento black ink. And I do see that I've got some ink on my blocks. I'm going to be very careful not to get that on my card. So there we have our sentiment done. And our ribbon should be dry enough to work with now, so we'll do that part. There we go. So it just takes about a minute or so to dry. And I want to make sure I'm putting my glue dots on the same side. So I'm just pressing the ribbon to the dot nice and hard, and then it peels off onto the ribbon. Should anyway. There we go. So to put this on my card, I'm just gonna put it where I want. Fold it over, and our glue dot is holding it at the back. And I'm gonna pull that taut across, fold it over, and the glue dot's gonna do the work on both sides. And you can see our cutout here. See, it's gonna be stuck to the card, so no one needs to know about that. So there we go. And now we can finish our little cards. So I'm going to use the label this way. Oh, I love that color combo. And I'm just going to put our little butterflies like so. Isn't that nice? So you could use dimensionals to do this too if you wanted to bump it up a bit. I honestly don't feel that it's needed on this. It's so simple yet pretty. So I'm just going to use a little liquid glue. You may have noticed that the edges were overhanging there, so I'm not going to put glue all the way to the edge. I'm just, this butterfly's alive. So I'm just going to kind of leave the edges free of glue because they're going to be overhanging the paper anyway. So, that way. And I don't know, there's totally different ways to do this. I really like my little butterflies to be askew from each other. Some people like putting them, you know, straight. It's all about personal preference. So I think one thing that would be helpful here is just to add a little bit of bling to our butterflies. So you could use rhinestones, you could use any embellishments you have. I'm going to use our pearls. I'm going to show you, I don't know if you've seen me do this before, but you can color our pearls using the Stampin' Blends. You can also color the dimensionals, sorry, not the dimensionals, the rhinestones using your blends as well, and make them into any color you want, which I think is just super cool. So I'm just doing a few to be able to put on our butterfly. You can see from the splotches of color on here that I've done it before. All right, so we are going to just pick those up and put them down. I find it easiest to use a pick to do this, just to get under it. So this is my my handy dandy take your pick tool. It's got a sticky putty edge on one side, and on the other side it's got this little pointed pick, but it also, you can flip this over and it becomes a little spatula, which is also useful. So you could do this with your fingers too, but I just find I have a better aim of where I'm putting things when I'm using the little pick. There we go. So we've added a little bit of bling. Again, coordinating colors, and I'm going to use dimensionals to pop this up. So, getting near the end of my sheet here, and that is okay. So when I get near the end of my sheet, I just use my scissors and I cut the bits on the border, and you've got a whole lot more to use that way. Because it is double-sided, sticky all the way around, so there's no waste there. Whoops. I'm telling you, these butterflies really are alive. Okay, so I'm just centering that on. Mostly. There we go. And then we'll put that on our card base using liquid glue. And see, only you know about that secret hole in the back. So there's our finished card. Isn't that cute? So another thing, I like to decorate the inside a bit. So I'm going to use the Butterfly Gala stamp set to do that. You could add a sentiment as well to the inside. So if you haven't seen this stamp set in action, it's photopolymer stamps, so see-through stamps. You can see that it has been very well loved, as it is quite stained, but your stamps do come clean when you clean them off. It's just that it's stained because of the, oh dear, I forgot to take out my ink. It's just stained because the reds and the pinks do that. So I'm just going to add a few butterflies to my card. So I'm going full strength on the first impression, and then I'm not re-inking here, so this is at the lighter strength. And I'll do the same on this side. So you could leave it like that. This stamp set does come with little bodies for our butterflies, so I am going to add a teeny tiny little body, which always stresses me out a little because I'm always worried that I'm not lining it up, but it'll be fine. So because I did full strength and then not for the second butterfly, I'm doing the same thing with the little bodies. Otherwise you'd have a very dark body and very light wings. And there we go. And then you've still got lots of writing space on that. So, as I mentioned, I'm really trying to use up my paper. And another way to use up paper that is just so nice is to do the envelope. So we're going to do that. I could use the butterflies and stamp a pattern on the envelope, but instead I'm going to use the paper. So I'm cutting this piece. So this is 6 by 2 1/4. And let me pull over my envelope here. We are going to do the back flap of the envelope in the coordinating Granny Apple Green using the pattern that we use for our little butterflies. So you can do this with liquid glue, you can do it with double-sided tear tape, double-sided tape. You could also use snail tape. I'm trying really hard not to put too much glue because I don't want this to be kind of bumpy and weird. So super, super, super simple. I just lined it up with the score line on the envelope, or the fold line. And then I'm going to use my scissors and cut off the excess paper. And it just adds such a pretty kind of coordinated detail. And you can see that the 2 1/4 is the exact size of this flap, so I don't even have to cut that center piece. So I'm just following the outline of the envelope flap. And here is our pretty envelope and coordinating card. Isn't that cute? Isn't that awesome? So here's a couple others that I made. So I made this one again with the butterflies. I used a black mat, and I used a die cut to do the circle, but if you have a circle punch, you know, that would work well as well. And I did the envelope the same way. This one I did in the Bermuda Bay color. So the Oh So Ombre paper comes in 4 different shades. So there's the blue, which is the flip side is Rococo Rose, and the green is flip side Blackberry Bliss. So for this one I used the Bermuda Bay, same technique. I cut out a square here. I used a die cut to do this, but again, you could do it with anything. And this is the balloon from the Soar Confidently, I think is what it's called. Yes, Soar Confidently, which is a more masculine set that they've come up with, but this line art balloon just blows my mind. It's so detailed and pretty. And I really wanted to put it in the sky. So that's what I did with this one. And again, I did the envelope. I just used the solid ombre, not the patterned. So I hope these inspire you to use up some of your paper and give this technique a try. Thanks.